What's going on, guys? So there's going to be a series of MacBook videos that are going to be coming out, but in today's video is going to be me comparing the M2 Pro versus the M3 base model. And since we're reaching a pro status here on the channel, let's not forget our pro status sponsor, nobody. All right, let's start off with price because that'll make this video make more sense. And I know people usually talk about price at the end, but let's be honest. Most people vote with their wallet. So this M3 starts at $1,600 and the M2 Pro can be found for $1,600 as well on Apple's own website or even cheaper on other retailer sites. So for the same price, do you get an older machine with a pro level chip or a new device since it's the latest and greatest? Now, you might be shocked looking at the length of this video, but the differences between the two aren't that many. First, let's talk about build quality and design, and they are nearly identical. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you'd probably guess that these are the same device. However, on the newer model, we don't have a Thunderbolt port on the other side. Now, I want to stay on this topic here because this is my main MacBook Air with two Thunderbolt ports on one side and then just a headphone jack on the other. And I've been using this machine for nearly 3 years at this point. And having two Thunderbolt ports really doesn't bother me. Granted, I'm not a professional, but that's besides the point, because I typically have this thing docked to my desk anyway, and with one Thunderbolt port, I have everything that I need. With that being said, thank God. With that being said, this is a pro device, so we should have Thunderbolt ports on both sides. It's not a deal breaker, but something you should be aware of. Hubs are affordable if you really need new ports. Let's talk about the display. Tell me if you can spot a difference between the two. I'll wait. Can't tell a difference? Yeah, it's because they're nearly identical once again, except the newer M3 model goes up to 600 nits in regular light. They both max out at, I believe, 1600 nits when you're watching HDR content, but when you're just doing SDR, regular stuff, browsing the web, this one does get noticeably brighter. Now, I do want to talk about this whole justification of, oh, I want to get a higher nit count because it's easier to see outdoors. That is true, but I'm sorry to tell you that you should probably just get some sunglasses from Fiverr or Below or some other dollar-centric store, pop them on, and I'm telling you, these both look identical outdoors, and it's better for your eyes. If you want the UV protection, get the Costco ones for like 15 bucks, but having a higher brightness outdoors really doesn't constitute of you justifying buying a machine. Just get some sunglasses. Anyway, moving on. Trackpad and keyboard is another category that I like to talk about, and this one isn't nearly identical. It is identical. There is no difference between the two. So let's move on to things that are a little bit more tangible. So speakers. I listened to music back to back on both of these machines for nearly 30 minutes, and my conclusion is this. Identical. They still have 6 high-fidelity speakers with a force-canceling sub. Take a listen. They also both have 3 studio quality microphones and a 1080p webcam. From my perspective, they look identical. Take a look and listen. All right, so this is the microphone and video quality on the M3 MacBook Pro 14-inch. I want to say that it actually looks a little bit better. Maybe the colors look better, but if you don't have these side by side, you probably wouldn't even notice a difference. And once you shrink it down, you're not going to notice. But overall, I've got to say that they're decent. They're pretty good. Identical, like the rest of this entire video. All right, so this is the camera and microphone test on the M2 MacBook Pro. You guys let me know how it looks and sounds. In terms of how it looks, I'd say Apple's definitely up there in video quality. I would say that the M3 laptops actually look slightly better, but probably, like I usually say, when you shrink this thing down to whatever call you're on, a lot of people aren't going to notice, but it's good enough. All right, let's get into the juicy part. It's not really that juicy for me, but the specs and the performance, because this is where I started to scratch my head. So the M2 Pro here, for the same price, has 10 CPU cores, 6 performance, 4 efficiency cores. The M3, on the other hand, only has 8 CPU cores, 4 performance, 4 efficiency. Get it? The M3 was made for performance, for efficiency. Lame joke, I know. So M2 side, we have 16 gigabytes of RAM starting off, and the M3 starts off at 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is probably the biggest talking point between these two laptops at the same price point. They both have 512 gigabytes of storage, so good on you, Apple, for giving us storage. But let's get into performance. So I did several benchmark tests and just general tests across all these laptops. Like I said, more videos to come out as I'm continuously trying to do research. Get subscribed for that. And guess what chip did better? Yeah, the Pro level chip ended up winning, obviously. I mean, just look at these charts. M2 wins each time except for in single core performance. So shut the video off and go buy yourself a refurbished M2 Pro. Not quite. You see, if we look back at these charts, the differences aren't that big. So I recorded this so you guys can get a real-time view of how fast both these machines are. So on the left is the M3 and then the M2 Pros on the right-hand side, and I'll show you guys the results here. All right, so the results are in, and for the M3, we finished at 5 minutes, 10 seconds. And then with the M2 Pro, we finished at 5 minutes, 6 seconds. So for the Final Cut Pro test, all I really did was export my S23 Ultra versus the iPhone 15 Pro video. It has different effects, 2 4K video files in HDR rendered exactly at the same time. I don't say exactly, probably like 10, 15 seconds. The M3 won, but I'll show you guys footage of the H254 or 264 and then HEVC. The HEVC one might shock you. Anyway, all right, so this is my latest test when it comes to doing renders on Final Cut Pro. So this is just my 15 Pro Max versus S23 Ultra video, up on both of these devices here, laptops I should say specifically. So I'm gonna render these out a couple times and watch in real time how close these machines are. So it's about a 20-minute video. It's gonna take half that time, but yeah, I'll just get things set up here and let you guys see for yourself. So right off the bat, I'm just going to do H264. I'm going to hit next. And let's just say I'm going to call this 256H. Seriously, guys, watch how close these are. So as both these machines are blazing through the renders, what I can honestly say is whatever the length of your timeline is, just cut that in half and add in a couple minutes because that's how long it takes for these things to render. The M3, keep in mind, I'm not sure if I mentioned this during the video, but it's only using 8 gigabytes of RAM and it's still outpacing the M2 Pro in terms of like actual performance. Even though the core count is different, it really feels like in terms of performance, the M3 is just a rebranded M2 Pro. So real world use cases, I really don't think a lot of people are going to notice a difference. So M3 finished, and we'll give it a couple more seconds on the M2 Pro side of things. And let's just say 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Of course, I'm wrong. It's close though, right? Come on. Don't do this to me. Live? Tell me you're done. Come on. Okay, see, the difference honestly is not that big. I'll probably have the counter up here showing you how many seconds difference it is. But once again, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 8 gigabytes of RAM. So I'm gonna run this test again and then check on the battery life between the two, and might shock you. So the render you see right now is HEVC 10-bit, and I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the benchmarking and the charts and whatnot. And yes, at times the M2 is faster, other times the M3 is faster, but on average, the differences are not that big. So I'm probably going to talk about this later in the video in my conclusion, but in terms of performance, there's really no difference between the two. So if you are a video editor and you primarily use Final Cut Pro, listen, you can flip a coin, choose either, and you wouldn't even notice a difference. So the test results are about to come in, and you're about to see that this one, honestly, the same exact time. Like if you're gonna say that this one is faster in technicality, yes, it won, but in the grand scheme of things, it's essentially identical. Now, if we look at the battery life, 88% on the M3 and then 87% on the M2 Pro. So battery life is essentially the same. You are basically getting an M2 Pro as, I honestly want to say rebranded as an M3, just not as good multi-core performance. But general use case, it's pretty much identical performance. So for the long battery test, I have the brightness set a little bit higher than what Apple has, and I have the speakers on as well, because when you're watching stuff, you're probably listening to it as well. And there's only a 13-minute difference with the M3 lasting longer. I just want to correct myself. The M2 Pro actually lasts 13 minutes longer than the M3. Sorry about that. I mean, technically speaking, if we look at the categories, the M2 Pro is better overall. But if we kind of zoom out and look at the numbers and like relate them to like reality and like what actually matters, the differences are pretty negligible. And I'm surprised I said that word without butchering it, because I always mess that word up. But let's not neglect the fact that I did all these tests with 8 gigabytes of RAM. As much as we hate Apple giving us 8 gigabytes of RAM, if I'm getting the same performance for half the RAM, do we really need it? Yes, we do. Yes. That, no debate. Yes, we do. So that segues into part of the conclusion of who is this laptop for, which one do I recommend, and which one you should buy. Let's answer the last question first. So as a consumer, depending on your country and position, you have the luxury of getting used products. I'd honestly say look for a M2 Pro 14-inch for around the same price. If you can't find any, or if used isn't really an option in your position or country, get the base M3. Performance-wise, it's honestly identical. Like, benchmark scores show that this has higher multi-core, this has higher single core. They trade blows, but overall, the differences aren't that big. You're not missing out on much. But similar to my Air recommendations, like the MacBook Air, on this specific model, you are only allowed one upgrade. If I find you and you upgraded the RAM and storage, I'm not even gonna be mad. I'm just gonna be disappointed, because you should have just gotten the M3 Pro for $2,000. Now, obviously, if your country currency is a little bit different, I'll let it slide. But if the price equals the M3 Pro, just get that model instead. For me, I'd recommend just upgrade the RAM and call it a day. But who is this computer really for? Because it's still such a strange configuration at its base model. And I struggled with this question, and then it finally hit me. Both of these laptops, when they were brand new, mainly this one, have a $400 price gap. However, this base M3 replaced the base MacBook Pro M1 and M2. And those laptops were kind of geared towards businesses. Yes, I understand that businesses buy their employees the regular 14-inch, 16-inch, souped up like crazy, but let's not forget that those were the Intel days. Well, the 14-inch didn't exist back then, so it was really just the 15-inch and the 13-inch, right? Souped up Intel chips. But we're in the M days. But now, if Apple is offering performance that rivals the previous M2 Pro chip with all the benefits of a 14-inch device at a lower price point, for businesses that want to give their employee MacBooks without paying an arm or a leg, this is a compelling option, especially when you start factoring into the Windows space as well. For example, let's take a company with a size of 5,000 people. Just for hypothetical purposes, everyone gets a MacBook, even the janitors and the support staff, because they are important as well. So 5,000 employees times 2,000 is $10 million. 5,000 employees times 1,600 is $8 million. That's a 20% saving in expenses for essentially the same productivity. Because mind you, companies can't really buy the M2 in bulk for their company, because you can't really buy used M2s in bulk settings like that. You have to get brand new. But if you're getting the same performance as an M2, why not just get this? Now, if the company took my advice and upgraded the RAM, now we're sitting at $9 million total. But that's still $1 million in savings alone. And at least here in America, Apple products are becoming more prevalent in day-to-day work. I see iPads at kiosk. Actually, I'll save that for a completely separate video. But even the return on investments when it comes to MacBooks, the company can sell these MacBooks MacBooks later down the road for more than whatever laptops they give out on the Windows side of things. No disrespect to Dell or HP and stuff like that. It's just MacBooks have a better resale value, and companies, in terms of a business aspect, operation-wise, they want to make sure they're getting a good return on their investment and the productivity from their employees. Are their machines capable of churning out stuff that will generate revenue from them? So that's the whole business aspect I got when I started to look at this base M3. So my conclusion between the two is, once again, if you have the opportunity to get the M2 Pro, get the M2 Pro. Now, if you can't do that, don't feel bad for getting the base M3 by itself, because performance-wise, it's there. The package and the benefits of the 14-inch is all here. Now, 8 gigabytes is criminal, but you gotta give credit to Apple because they did a bang-up job with this laptop. And let's also not forget, I wanna bring this up as well. The Surface laptop also costs $200 to upgrade the RAM. So can we evenly be mad at companies? Because Microsoft, you're not excused. So if you can't afford the $2,000 M3 Pro, don't feel bad. This M3 is seriously no slouch. Wait, why did this display turn off? What the heck? I have no idea how long the display was off, but we're just gonna continue with it. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I appreciate every single sub, like, and comment. And as always, guys, much love. That's it. That's it. First, let's talk about build quality and design. With that being said, thank God, that almost hit the monitor. With that being said, I'll even show. All right, so for my next technically speaking, in 5,000 employees times 2,000 is $10 million. 5,000 employees times 18, not 18. So